Hey, what's your name, bro?
Danny Acosta.
Danny Acosta. So you got any children?
I have 3 sons. I'm blessed with 3 sons.
3 sons. That's awesome, man. So on what age were you when you had your first kid?
I was 19 years old. I got, in 1 year, my 19th year, I joined the military, got married, and had my first son.
All right, cool. And you got 3. So what's the ages of them, all 3 of them?
20 years old, 15 years old, and 9.
Dang, that's a nice little gap, though.
Yeah.
So what's the difference from, what did you learn from the first child to the last child? Like, how did you grow as a father, you know?
Well, each son brought a different meaning into my life, because when I was 19 and I had my first son, I was in a difficult, tough place.
Yeah.
Because of how everything transpired, and you know, it's a really long, drawn-out story, but needless to say, you know, God chose to give me a son instead of what He gives a lot of other people, and what a lot of other people would have considered a dilemma, I considered my biggest blessing. And because of him, because of my first son Gabriel, I named him after the Archangel Gabriel, because he saved me from a lot, and he was my motivating force through the military. Anytime anything got hard, anything got tough, he's exactly who I thought about to get me through it.
So your son was your motivation for everything.
Absolutely.
Your firstborn.
Absolutely. He was the catalyst to transform from a boy to a man.
All right, cool. So was your father in your life when you were growing up?
Oh yeah, he was as present as any man could be. He sacrificed more than I could have ever asked him to. And not until I became a father did I really realize the sacrifices and the blessings that he gave me. He made tremendous sacrifices financially, time-wise, to make sure that he was a part of me and my sister's lives.
All right, that's cool. So what are some things that you may have taken from your father, you know, and you put it into, or mixed it up and implemented some of them things to your children?
I mean, the first thing is God. From my earliest memory in my life, Christ was the center of everything. He was the one who not only brought us to church and made us get involved in the church, but he lived the example. I never once saw my father drink or be belligerent. I've never seen him going out with the fellas and doing his own thing. He dedicated his entire life to God and his family, and that's just the way he's always been. So that work ethic was a huge one for me too. I mean, he got up every morning and he came home late every night, except for days that me and my sisters had events like sporting events. He sacrificed the time to make sure that he was there for us.
Okay.
So, but the most important thing I would say overall is just his wisdom. I mean, from a young boy to today, if there's a decision that I have to make, it goes through him, because he never tells me what to do, but he always
draws it out for
his
you.
piece, and I know when it comes from God, and I consider being a father a tool of God.
Okay. What is one of your biggest challenges of being a father?
Well, always that balance. You know, just like I tell my sons all the time, life is about balance. You can't have too much of one thing and not enough of the other, like work. I mean, if all you do is work and you don't make the time for your kids, then what are you doing it for? A lot of men say, oh yeah, you know, family comes first, you know, definitely, absolutely, but they don't live that life. They don't actually spend the time with their kids. They spend 8 to 10 hours at work and come home and spend 30 minutes with their kids. That's not enough.
And it's not, I said the same thing, man.
Yeah, you have to put in that time, make that commitment, because I would rather be tired and exhausted doing something with my kids than being tired and exhausted at work. That's, the kids come first.
It doesn't make no sense. What do you think is the most rewarding aspect of being a father?
There's so many, man, but for me and my family, there are 9 living Rolando Acostas right now. And from my grandfather down, my grandfather's name is Rolando Acosta. My father's name is Rolando. My name is Rolando, and all 3 of my sons are Rolando. My uncle's Rolando. there's a big thing that comes with that, and that's legacy. And the fact that I can track the men in my family back so far, and they're all good, God-fearing men, is a huge, huge blessing for me. Because the blessings that I've gotten is what I pass down to my kids. I mean, that ability to say, don't just do the right thing. Do the right thing because it's right. Don't do the right thing because someone's looking.
Yeah.
And your name, I always ask my sons what their name is. And they tell me their name. I said, there's a responsibility that comes with that. You know, and every man has a decision to make. Am I going to be a good man who actually does good? Or are you just going to be any other guy?
Yeah.
You know, if you want to step up and step out, I mean, my grandfather sacrificed a lot to bring us to this country, to bring my father and his siblings to this country. And my father was born in Dominican Republic, came here as a teenager, and I'm a first-generation American. And I take that responsibility very serious because my great-grandfather saw something important to come here to the United States. He loves his country, you know, but he came here for a better life.
Yeah.
So I felt a responsibility to come here and do something that means something.
So speaking of that, your grandfather migrating over here, right? So immigrant. Do you talk to your children about racism or, you know, being a minority? Do you talk to them about the struggles of growing up as a minority?
What I try to do as far as anything race related, I give them my life. You know, I grew up in a predominantly black and Hispanic school system. You know, in my high school we had 5 white people and that was it. But I try not to portray to them a victim mentality. I think it's important that the way you carry yourself is the way you're going to be treated. I don't care what race you are. There's struggles with everything. You know, I dealt with racism a lot, especially in high school. Most of the teams we played were white teams, and you know, we would get called names, and referees would outright, blatantly, you know, call us with racial epithets. But that was life, and I never felt like a victim one time in my life. My father never taught me to be a victim. I mean, I think that hard work and education, the byproduct of that speaks for itself. And you know, one thing I'm a law enforcement officer. I was a police officer in New Jersey. Now I'm a deputy sheriff in Pennsylvania. And I've always spoken to them about how to treat law enforcement. And one of the big things that we always talk about is, you know, if you get pulled over by a law enforcement officer, how do you act? Never had that conversation with my kids specifically because I know the way my kids act. I mean, I run a pretty tight ship in my house, and if you treat a law enforcement officer with respect, you're going to treat everybody with respect, and law enforcement is going to treat you accordingly. Of course, there are some exceptions to that. And for those things, there, you know, except for my 20-year-old, he's a man right now, so he fends for himself. With my other 2, if there's an issue like that, they contact me and I deal with it. Okay. But that's a conversation that needs to happen. Yeah. But I would say that overall, it's important to not teach your kids to be victims. Okay. Because everybody has struggles. It doesn't matter what race you are. Everybody has struggles. Everybody gets discriminated for one reason or the other, not just skin color. If you're fat, if you're skinny, if you're gay, if you're black, Hispanic, it don't matter. You get teased, you get ridiculed. So how you carry yourself and how you move forward is the way you're going to be treated.
Did you have a mentor growing up, or was your father, like, how important is it for a young man to have an elder that he got, like a role model? If he didn't have a father, you're there, you're actively in your children's life. But how important is it for a young man to have that role model, a man?
It's absolutely imperative. You cannot, I don't think that a young child can have as a successful life if you don't have a role model. It's imperative that you have somebody showing you what right looks like. Otherwise, you fall astray. You go astray.
A lot of these communities, a lot of people don't have it.
No, they don't.
You know what I mean? So,
and that's why, I mean, you know, with me, myself, I find it always important to give back because my father where I grew up in my school, so even till today, I'm 39 years old, and even till today, when I go home to Englewood and I see my friends, they always talk to me about my father, because my father didn't only set an example for me, but he set an example for everyone else that I knew, all my friends that I invited to church. So he was a father for those that were fatherless. I mean, unfortunately, I could count on one hand everybody that I grew up with as a father in the house. I mean, very few have a father that was in the home. So the fact that my father felt it important enough to not only set an example for me, but set an example for the community. In my church, we had a program called the Royal Rangers, which is basically a Christian Boy Scout group. It's
AJ
a camping, outdoor-based program. And he was a commander for years and years and years. And every single one of my friends that I played baseball with, that I went to school with, that I went to play football with, I invited them all to go. And they all fell in love with not only the program, but my father, because he treated them like he treated me. You know, so having that example is huge. And I mean, if there was anything that I could say could transform not only our community, but this nation, is having strong men as an influence in young boys and girls' lives. Yeah. That can transform an entire nation. It's huge, especially in the minority community. You look back 50 years, and I saw a stat recently that said 50 years ago, 27% of all minority babies were born out of wedlock. Today, almost 70%.
Dang,
that means 7 out of every 10 babies born that are minorities have two parents in the home. It's huge.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So when you see the shift in society,
how important is it for them to a college degree, a trade? What do you talk to them about?
I mean, there's a lot of different routes. There's so many different routes, but obviously it's a good, strong education when you're a young boy, but pass through high school, you don't necessarily have to go to college. I mean, I went to college for a year, but then I went straight into the military, and I used the military to pay for the rest of my college when I got out. There's different ways to get things done. I didn't pay for my college education because the military provided my GI Bill. There's different routes. Everybody has their own journey, but education is absolutely key. Absolutely key to be able to progress in life, because unfortunately, not that a college degree necessarily makes you any smarter, because I know a lot of people with degrees that they can't make it very far. Hard work ultimately is what matters, and the decisions you make. But education is imperative.
It's a lot of kids in these minority communities, well, urban communities, that all they know growing up, right? It's just from corner to corner. You know, maybe the next town over. Do you think traveling out of your state and out of your city make a difference in the child's growth?
Absolutely, it does. That's part of education. I don't think education only means school, you know, in an actual physical building. Yeah. Education means things like that. My father, in our church, we did a lot of missions trips. And when I was 14, he sent me on my first mission trip to Peru. Totally blew my whole world up, because I thought I knew what poverty and struggle was, and then you go to those countries, and I remember being 14 years old and going to Peru and meeting a young man who was 15 years old and was a pastor of a church of 150 people.
Wow.
And here you have a 15-year-old boy, a year older than I was at the time, you know, leading people to Christ and having this passion. So I look at it like today, if other kids can have that experience to go and travel, you know, outside of their own community, is huge. When I was in the military, I was 18 years old, and I did my basic training in AIT, my job training in Oklahoma. And I remember seeing people that looked like me from down south and acted differently, dressed differently, spoke differently. That was a huge thing for me, because for a lot of us, we're in our bubble.
Exactly. You
don't
know nothing
get
else.
to really expand out to that. So when I met people from the West Coast, and I met people from down south and in the Midwest, it was a great education to see different cultures, different people, see different things. Because then you can bring that back to your community and expand your mind a little more. Have ideas that are different than the ones that you hear in your community.
Because you're gonna keep. What is the proper age do you begin to talk to them about, like, sex and stuff like that?
I try not to shield them from a lot, to be honest with you. Being that I'm there and I'm very present, I feel like I can have an immediate impact if questions come up or they see something or hear something. I never shied away from a lot of issues. You know, when it comes to sex, each boy is different. Each personality is different. You know, my oldest son was a little bit more sheltered than my middle son, Josiah. He's more personable and more social. Different personalities require a different approach. And I'm very straightforward. I don't beat around the bush. This is how it works. This is what happens. These are the consequences and repercussions of decisions you make. And for me, it was a blessing because I use my own example. I mean, when my now wife was pregnant with our son, we weren't married. And I didn't marry her out of obligation. I didn't marry her because I wanted to. I married her because when she told me she was pregnant with Gabriel, I made a decision right then and there to live a life that my father raised me to live, but I made the decision for myself. She told me she was pregnant when I was in college in Connecticut, playing football. And at that very moment, I fell to my knees and I didn't get up for 72 hours, for 3 days straight.
Wow.
And when I got up, I heard God's voice and he told me exactly what to do. So I could have used a situation like, I'll have a kid on the way at 18 years old, and dealt with that a lot of different ways. But instead, I chose to listen to God's word, and now the blessings that are a ramification of that, a consequence and repercussion of that, is huge. So I use my own example. I say, listen, this is what I did. This is what I did as a young boy, you know, with girls. And I thank God every day that God set me straight. So look at me. You know, follow your Father in heaven and follow your Father on earth. Because I live my life according to God's principles. I don't live it by my own. I don't make any decisions that I don't feel God has me.
So you let them be their own individuals. Because you know a lot of parents is, hey, look, you're going to do this because I did this. Or this is the way you're supposed to do it. Do you think that's the proper way to parent, or how do you do it?
I think just like everything else is a balance. Because the truth is that I can only teach my own truth. But my own truth is my own way. I tell my sons that I live my life by 3 very specific things. Everything else just falls to the wayside. There are only 3 things in my life that matter. God, family, country.
Okay.
Loving your God, loving your family, and serving your country. Those to me are the things that I try to instill in my sons. God comes first. And that not just in a, hey, God exists way. You got to set the example. You have to actually live a good life. And they see that in me. My family is my number 1 priority. There's nothing else that matters more than my family here on earth. And my country. You know, the only God in my family I love more than my country. And I love my country so much because of the opportunities that it gives me. There's absolutely nothing that stops me from getting anything I want. Nothing. There are obstacles there, but nothing stops me from getting what I want. And a lot of that has to do with the way this country was built and the way this country was founded. Not perfect by any means, but the opportunities are there. My son right now is 20 years old. He's in his 3rd year of college. He hasn't paid a dime for college because he busted his butt in high school and made decisions as an 18-year-old adult to serve in the military and as an officer. And because of that, he got a lot of good benefits out of that. You can't do that in any other country. It doesn't exist in other countries.
That's
the ability to get a higher education, and he wants to go on to law school and do those things. They don't exist in other countries. You know, unfortunately, you know, we talk about my father coming from Dominican Republic. You could be a doctor in Dominican Republic and come here to this country. It doesn't really mean much.
It don't mean nothing. But how do you feel about that? Is that not kind of messed up?
Oh, it is. And unfortunately, those are the ways that those, especially in South America and those islands.
Because a lot of people will go there to get the surgery. You could go there and get the surgery, and they do a phenomenal job. Your body's the same everywhere. Your teeth are the same everywhere. You know.
Yeah, there's a lot of smart people that get an education not only there but here. They come here and then go back to their countries and provide a great service for them. But ultimately, it's the way the government's structured. You know, a lot of times you have a government that's structured for the government to reap all the benefits, and they don't trickle down to the actual people. But that's again, that's one of the blessings about this country. Not a perfect country, not a perfect system, but every single person, I believe this in my heart, has the opportunity to do great things.
Thing about you, what would it be?
I don't think I would change anything about me. I have faults. We all have faults. We all maybe speak a little too soon before we should, or get angry at times that we shouldn't get angry. But I truly believe that if God took me from where I was to where I am now, despite my mistakes and despite my faults, He has me where I am now, then I could only say that I'm thankful for those things that I did. Because they taught me lessons that I wouldn't have learned otherwise. I'm a hard-headed person, and sometimes it takes a profound event in my life to happen in order for me to learn my lesson.
They say a hard head make a soft arm, right? Yeah. What advice do you got for one of your sons or any young man out here that's going to be a father for the first time? If he was sitting right in front of you, what are some things that you would tell him?
I would tell him the first thing is Constitution. Every man has to have a strong constitution. Just like a country has their constitution, which is a rule book, a way of living, a way of structuring your life, is the same way a man has to live. You have to have a strong constitution. I didn't always speak about a constitution. This is really, really new for me. I started thinking, I'm 39 years old, and as I age, obviously we start thinking and get more wise. And I started thinking about the word constitution and how important it is for a man to have it.
Yeah.
Because we can be influenced by so many things. So I would tell a young man that the things that you do now, the things that you let in your mind and in your heart right now, is what ultimately is going to form your constitution later on in your life. So if you're going to be a father soon, you have to start thinking about instilling in that young person, young boy or young girl, the things that you've learned. And those things will form your constitution, your rule book. The way that you are in front of people, behind closed doors, with your wife, with your female co-workers. If you don't live that life out in the open and behind closed doors the same way, you're going to fall victim to a lot of things that men fall prey to. Not only men, but women. Because a lot of things that apply to men also apply to women. The fall of a lot of great men, for example, is women.
It's a spirit.
Is that flesh.
Yeah, it is.
The Word of God, the Bible speaks very, very clearly about that. And if we don't have a strong constitution, how can you fight that off? When I was a young man, I didn't fight it off.
Yeah, it's tough.
I just didn't. and that's no way to live, because it feels great in the moment, but the consequences and repercussions of that cataclysmic in the future. It forms almost every other aspect of your life. When you have those decisions that you make as a young, immature person, they stay with you for the rest of your life. So the earlier we can get young men and young women to realize that those decisions and those thoughts and those things that you let in early on is what's going to form the way you are later on in your life. A strong constitution.
All right, cool. So what are your thoughts on services or a program, for fathers? Something that we could put into play for fathers, something like maybe a job reform, some educate. What are some ideas you think to make stronger dads out here? Well, a community effort to have stronger dads out here.
Yeah. Well, for me, everything always stems from God. So I feel like one of the biggest arms of Christ, obviously, is the church. And I think that it's the church's responsibility to create programs in the communities that address all these issues. Not only to condemn, not only to point fingers, not only to preach about the hard things to preach about, but also to create those programs that instill principles that create great men. And having opportunities and services to provide jobs for young men, and education for young men, and just experiences as young men that they can carry on.
What is something that you open up though? Like any idea, like full program?
Well, for me personally, the things that I love the most is the outdoors.
Yeah, hunting.
So
and stuff
you know,
like that.
when I love to hunt. I love to be outdoors. I love to do things outside. So the program that we spoke about earlier, Royal Rangers, was a huge part of my life. I mean, huge. You know, I grew up in a suburban area. If I wasn't exposed to going outdoors and doing things, I wouldn't have known about it. And those experiences I found to be the most impactful in not only my life, but because when I became an adult, I became a commander in Royal Rangers. And I started using the outdoors and using those experiences to show boys valuable lessons in life. So for me personally, that's a tool I would use. That's just personal in my life.
Okay.
Being outdoors in sports. I mean, I played sports my entire life. I mean, hardly anything teaches you more about life than sports.
Seriously, it is simply like you got the coach there. You know every play. Every play, you got to try to overcome something. You know
Adversity
what I mean?
over triumph, restoration over justification. I mean, the things that you learn in sports are the things that carry you in life.
Man.
I had a great experience in my life with my oldest son using baseball as a tool to teach him about life. And not until he got older, till I felt he understood, I started talking to him about baseball.
Yeah.
And then there was a moment where it kind of transformed into, hey, we're not talking about baseball anymore. I started using baseball analogy, but after a point, it became, hey, we're not actually talking about baseball anymore. We're talking about life. Yeah. If you don't do the work to prepare for life, you won't reap the benefits. Sounds a lot like sports.
Yeah, people don't understand that. With like LeBron and stuff, you see him, he's great, because he got this, but no, man works hard.
Put in work.
Because no one ever sees what you do behind closed doors. Yeah. They always just say, oh my God, he got this, why can't I have it? But you didn't work as hard.
You got to fail too.
Yeah.
And baseball is one of the best sports for that. I mean, a batter strikes out and doesn't get on base 70 to 80% of the time. The best hitter in baseball only gets on base 3 out of every 10 times at bat. He's crazy. Only successful 30% of the time.
That's crazy.
So learning how to lose, learning how to shrug that off and keep pushing.
Probably like the
huge lesson.
So what's one of the biggest things you had to overcome as a person, as a father?
Yeah, I got started in my life really young. I got married at 19, had my first son at 19. So I had to learn how to become financially sound, really learn what hard work is in the midst of being a new father, being a new husband. It was very difficult for me. You know, for a lot of people now who didn't have that experience, they can go to college, get their college degree, settle down, buy a house, get a set, and then move on to marriage and kids. I didn't have that. I had to do it all at one
the same time. Yeah.
I wasn't going to let my son not reap the benefits that I reaped from having a father at home. So I worked hard to make sure that despite the fact that I was only 19 years old, I had to provide a life the best that I knew how. And thank God that I had somebody to look at. I knew what right looked like my whole life. And that's beyond a blessing. Really, that's beyond a blessing.
Yeah, because a lot of folks don't have it, man. What is a legacy you would like to leave behind?
My biggest legacy are Gabriel, Josiah, and Elijah. My angel, my king, and my prophet.
Okay.
Long after I'm gone, not only will my name carry on, but it will carry on through my son. And God says a day is like 1,000 years.
Yeah.
We're here for a very, very brief amount of time on this earth. And I believe that these 70, 80, 90, 100 years on this earth are a test. And how we serve God and how we serve others is huge. So the fact that I'm able to pass that on to my sons and carry on that legacy, it's almost like we never die. It's like we continue to live through our sons, and not only through our sons, but through those who we influence. It doesn't have to just be my sons. It could be anybody I come in contact with. You leave that behind. That's important.
All right, man. So do you got any handle or anything people could reach you at on, like a Facebook or Twitter or something like that, if somebody wanted to reach out and talk to you?
Danny Acosta is my name. On Facebook is Danny Acosta 69.
Okay.
At Facebook, and I'm not too huge on the social media, but I can always be reached where I am. I'm a deputy sheriff from Monroe County in Pennsylvania.
Okay.
You know, I always open up my doors, open up, you know, my heart to people whenever they want to talk. So anytime anybody wants to reach me, if you're in the Pennsylvania area in Monroe County, come see me in the sheriff's office. I'm always willing to help.
All right, man. Thanks for the talk, man. This has been another episode of Gift from Dad, and thank you.
Thank you.
All right, bro.